Welcome back to the Lift Free and Diet Hard podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Coates. Join me along with industry leaders and friends on a quest to get more people through the gym door and eating and living healthier. Join me where evidence meets empathy while rejecting fitness industry fads and extremism. Let's begin. This one is going to be a unique and fun one. My good friend, Michael James Shaw. You are not a fitness professional in the strictest sense, like virtually all my other guests, but you're actually an actor and a writer, although fitness is a big part of your life, with a really impressive list of Internet Movie Database credits. We could start with Avengers, Infinity War, and Endgame. You're the voice of Thanos' henchman Corvus Glaive, right? That's the big one.
Voice and motion capture. I did it all.
And motion capture. Gotcha.
Yeah.
That's true. And you were also really prominent as Mercer on The Walking Dead. You've been in the shows Limitless, the show Constantine, more recently Fight Night, alongside of icons like Samuel L. Jackson, Terrence Howard, Kevin Hart, Taraji P. Henson, Don Cheadle. That was a cool one. And now, coming up right away, Twisted Metal Season 2. That's pretty impressive stuff.
Yeah, man.
It's good to see you on here. And you know, it's funny, when I was digging around, I realized you also had a small role in The Wire. So I remember watching that, and I would have seen you on screen long before you and I were friends, right? Not even thinking about stuff like that. So, but it's great to have you on. All right.
Yeah,
I want to
great
dive
to be
into
here.
So I'm going to come back around. I want to ask a bit about your back history, but I want to start here because people love this stuff. You've got some shirtless screen time for Twisted Metal. Fitness is a huge part of your life. Were you able to go on screen in year-round shape, or do you do anything more aggressive with your training and nutrition to prepare for a role like this?
Twisted Metal, man. What a journey. No, it took quite some time, and it was actually the culmination of a whole year of work. Starting out with the Fight Night, I got into good shape for that, but it wasn't enough to I didn't have to take off my shirt at all. So it was more so building off of that, because I bulked up quite a bit during Fight Night, and then Twisted Metal came shortly after, maybe about 2 months in between. But it was a matter of I've never done a full cut for myself on screen. I mean, for an extended period of time. So prior, it'd be like, you have one scene and you prep for that. Maybe you have a month in preparation, and it's no biggie. And the next day you can have your big cheat meal and go back to normal. But this one was interesting because it was over a 3-month span where I didn't get to wear a shirt. So it took a lot of all the tools that I gathered over the years from different trainers, from my own explorations in dieting. All of that came into play, and it was a real testament to, owning your own abilities and figuring out all your resources to get the job done. And I made a point not to really employ someone to help me, because I wanted to see if I could do it myself,
And turned out, are you happy with how it all worked out?
It was fantastic, man. I don't think I pushed myself to that extent ever in my life. We were shooting for about 4 months, and we had some early call times, but I held my own and made sure if we had a call time at say 5 a.m., I was up at 3:15 at the gym, 3:30, doing my workout, getting picked up, going straight to set. We do a whole day of shooting, and if I had the energy, I would go to hot yoga right after we wrapped.
This episode is brought to you by KNKG, my favorite gym bag brand. For years, I did two stupid things. I bought cheap gym bags, which eventually fell apart, and I traveled with and checked a big suitcase. KNKG changed all that. In 2020, my aunt bought me a KNKG. Back then, they were known as King Kong duffel bag. Here it is. 5 years later, it's still indestructible. And last year, I spent hours on YouTube researching backpacks for travel. And I kept coming back to the KNKG Edge, which now goes everywhere with me. Travel, gym, work. I also just got a KNKG Conquer backpack and their Plus duffel bag. And these are both perfect for the gym. My main issue is I have too many bags and I can only use one at a time. Investing in high quality gear means you save money in the long run too. And I can save you guys 15% on yours. Go to www.knkg.com/Andrew59676. That's www.knkg.com/Andrew59676, or go to the link in the show notes.
Yeah.
So this pushed you physically, because knowing you, I know that you push yourself
for the roles, like the performance aspect of it, the preparation. Was it any different, including a more physical element to how you pushed yourself, or did it actually draw from your resources to also, take on a completely new persona on screen?
Every part, every project is different, and you kind of have to listen to what your body is asking of you and also kind of what the character is asking of you. There were some things that were necessary for, especially Twisted Metal, looking at the character's positioning in his car. He's stretched out with Jesus arms the whole time. So, well, a big part of the deal was like making sure I had the shoulder mobility and support of the back to maintain that position and feel comfortable and powerful in that position. So, you may think the mace swings are like, just for fun, but I was really trying to get my shoulders oiled up. So while on set, I had a mace and 2 kettlebells. Shout out to Primitive Fit Line, who created a Walking Dead mace for me that I used on set. But no, it was like all these things were kind of built into how my instrument was going to service the character.
And you can't necessarily speak for every actor, but there's all these famous, iconic shirtless scenes for a lot of people. You get your Brad Pitt in Fight Club and Troy, and Henry Cavill's got a few of them. But, and I know you, so the context, I know you walking around. You're a big muscular guy, you're fit, you stay pretty lean anyway. But are most of these actors walking around even close to what they look like on screen? Vary by person?
I can't speak for anyone else, but I know for me, like I said, it varies from project to project. Like for Twisted Metal, this guy, I wanted him to look big, but I needed to be lean enough where you could see abs. So it was a balance of riding my weight between 212, 210, keeping the body fat percentage between like 6 to 8 and maintaining that. Like I had a BMI scale, was checking it like every few days to make sure I was kind of in that same vein. But most people, I mean, if you're eating regularly, you're not walking around with like an 8-pack or, veins popping out, you got to live, you got to be human, and I think maintaining that kind of physique is only meant for a short amount of time. At a certain point, your body starts to eat your muscle and it's just not good.
And this episode is brought to you by Renaissance Periodization and the RP Hypertrophy app. RP is the industry leader in muscle building, coaching, and education. And this app is like having a coach in your pocket. It gives you everything you need, including training programs, form videos. It gives you all your sets, reps, and weights, so you just show up and follow the plan. It adjusts each week based off your progress. And the app was created by Dr. Mike Israetel, Nick Shaw, and the team at RP, who I've known for many years. And the entire team are incredible people who've always been supportive and generous with me, so I know their character and are easy to endorse. My library contains several RP books, and I've used RP training principles in my workouts and coaching with my clients for many years, long before the explosion in popularity of their YouTube channel, which is worth checking out. RP is the first sponsor I felt remotely comfortable endorsing after over 7 years of podcasting. And if hiring a one-on-one coach isn't for you, using the RP Hypertrophy app is the next best thing to maximize your gains and take the guesswork out of your program. And there's a 30-day money-back guarantee, so you can try it risk-free. If you don't like it, they'll give you your money back. And I've also got a serious discount for you of up to $50 US. Go to rpstrength.com/coats and use the code COATSRP, or go to the link below in the show notes, and that's rpstrength.com/coats. Use the code COATSRP.
I think it's generally understood that like a lot of these scenes, I think Henry Cavill talking about, I think he was in like a bathtub for one of the Witcher scenes for Geralt. And, I'm pretty sure he'd dieted pretty aggressively. I think he'd manipulated water for that scene, sodium. And then it was kind of a one and done, like you alluded to earlier, right? Which is a lot of these things versus you having to actually stay in that kind of shape for an extended period of time, which is impressive.
Yeah. It causes you to eat for 3 days from now, if that makes any sense. Like, so the whole process on Twisted Metal, I never ate the catering. I would cook and package my own meals, and I brought my food every day until the very end. That was really hard because, working on a set, you're there for 12 hours a day, sometimes 5-6 days a week. And to have the prep time and then stay honest with yourself. Like I was using MyFitnessPal, logging everything as I went, making sure I had to maintain this deficit. And yeah, it was challenging because I was pretty much on social probation for most of it. I remember I met up with you at Can Fit Pro.
Yep.
But we were able to have so there are certain allowances, like I can eat sushi, I can do these things, but I won't drink. Yeah, all these kind of rules. But I don't know. I feel like you're operating at like peak. You're a monster because you're operating at peak fitness, man. It was fun. Yeah.
I want to circle back to some of this stuff, but I guess this is your job. This is your career, right? So, having to put in this much effort into your physical body in many dimensions, not just its aesthetics, but the mobility side of stuff, the muscularity. That's what you're getting paid to do, especially in this particular role. Let's go back in time a little bit because I was curious about this, and I know you had some stuff you want to share about, I talked about the credits, like the writing stuff, the more obvious things to people, but, where did this all start? How did you get your start in acting, fitness? What were your big influences? What made you the man we're talking to here today?
Acting and fitness aren't the same thing for me. One is in service of the other. I mean, fitness is important to me, but making art is way more at the top of the totem pole for me. And fitness kind of came about later. I mean, I was playing like high school football, and yeah, I did weightlifting in high school as well, but it wasn't programmed into me. I was just like a big, heavy power lifter. I was probably like 315 when I left high school, and I had no sense of like how to feed your body. I knew how to mass up, but no one had really taught me like, well, I knew the food groups, yes, but how to eat healthy. Coming out of high school at 315, I had to teach myself how to eat, and retrain my brain to know that, oh, a good breakfast is not pancakes, bacon and eggs, but it was just a matter of like leaving Florida, and I went to undergrad in DC, studied theater. And from there, I just slowly kind of cut back and figured out, oh, this is how you manipulate your body. And now as an adult, I treat my body as a part of the costume. It is a instrument that I can manipulate to be more suited for the character, or change values of Michael so that you don't see him as much. That's kind of become like a part of my process now. It's like, oh, how do I incorporate movements or activities that bring the character to life in a way that is beyond the page, more so about his lifestyle, like Walking Dead for me. So I was doing research as ex-military, went to West Point, and the hand-to-hand combat taught is derived from the Gracie technique. So when I was working on Walking Dead, I had this inkling to like, oh, I should like start training Jiu-Jitsu. And it's kind of like just fell into my lap in a way. I was in Noonan, Georgia. We had started shooting. It'd been like maybe a month or two. And then I did a little Google search and found that there was a Gracie dojo like about 5 minutes from my house. And it took a lot of courage to actually walk in there and sign up, but probably it took another month before I actually had the guts to go in. But I feel like that, adding that physicality to the process of working on the show allowed me to understand a bit more about him as a human being, coupled with my own like experience growing up as a military kid. Those two things went hand in hand, and it stuck with me. But the adding some sort of movement to, explore the character in a way that is beyond like what's written on the page has been really helpful.
You alluded to like dance around there a little bit, like influence. So taking it back, and this is something I was really interested in. Who were your major influences on all this? What was your formative experience that led to, football, theater, going to school for that?
That's funny. I didn't want to play football at all. I growing up in Florida, I was more of a artsy kid. Like I was drawing and like painting as a like coming out of like elementary school. But I was just husky, like huge. Like in kindergarten, I was probably 5'11", so I was taller than my teacher.
Hold on.
And
You said kindergarten.
yeah, I was probably about 5'10", something like that. I was big. I was a big kid.
In kindergarten. Holy shit. All
Big
right.
kid. By the time I hit 5th grade, I was already 250. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Oh my God.
yeah. So, yeah, but I was a fat kid, so I had no inkling
right.
for sports. But my dad, John Henry Shaw, God rest his soul, he pushed for it because my brother played. He played, and I remember Pee Wee football, MCYFL down in Ocala, Florida. Man, I had to cut weight to even sign up because I was like 230, 240 at the time. So I had to cut weight prior to, like, being able to actually play. But my dad was kind of with me throughout the whole process. And he actually went to the first couple of weeks of practice with me, like not just like hanging out. He'd be on the field with me, right next to me. I had asthma at the time. I've grown out of it, but he had the inhaler in his pocket, literally in the trenches with me throughout that whole process. And yeah, he's a great man. His physique when I was growing up, my dad had an 8-pack, man. He was massive. Like, I always looked up to that, and I thought I would never attain it. And it's funny, like, years go by and you start to figure out what you need to do for your own body. And I feel like I've gotten pretty close to the physique that he had at his peak, man. He looked like a WWE wrestler, like just jacked. Yeah. Military man, Navy. Yeah.
Are there any lessons from watching him as a kid that maybe you didn't grab young, but were things that you found your way back to, borrowed from, that express themselves, not just your fitness life, but it sounds like there's an underlying discipline to all this, but the discipline to, pursue your acting career and excel in it?
Well, when I quit football, it was my junior year of high school. I quit football. I was a D1 prospect, and I had started since varsity, but it wasn't in my soul. And when I did that, Dad wasn't happy, but I just kept pushing. Like, I ended up going to Howard University, studying theater, did a few plays out there, then ended up going to Juilliard for grad school. And the whole time he'd make these jokes. Like, I come home for holidays after, like, doing a semester, doing like theater stuff, like mask work and, like, all this movement. I'm telling Mom about it. He's like, so he always be like, so you want to be like Chris Rock? You want to be like, Eddie Murphy? I'm like, no, Dad. I'm an actor. I'm an actor. It's very different. But not to say that those guys aren't actors, but I'm not a comedian. I can be funny at times, but I'm not a comedian. But, he didn't understand quite what I was trying to do. And it wasn't until I got on TV, like my first TV job, a show called Constantine, which you mentioned earlier. Yeah, I got to play this eternal voodoo priest. And when he saw me in that on TV, he said, "Oh, I get it. I see what you're trying to do." But it took almost 8 years for him to wrap his brain around why I didn't want to play football, because that is what is born and bred in Florida. That's what, yeah, that is the way to get out.
I guess it's like a religion in the southern part of the U.S., right? Football.
Yeah. I mean, sports in general around the world they have religious kind of attributes, but Florida, yeah. If you ain't playing football, what are you doing?
That's telling. So you mentioned, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, yoga, you're swinging your mace, you're a regular devotee of strength training. You've got a really robust array of physical activity and skills. So tell me about what those are holistic to you as part of your relationship with your long-term health. You mentioned how, I believe the words were, your body is part of the costume, obviously. How do these things all integrate for you?
Well, all the work that I do physically, I feel like it's all tied to yoga. And that's something I came to in the last few years of, like, going through injuries, surgeries, rehabs, and, getting control of my weight, getting control over after an injury, there's a lot of doubt that you have about certain joints. So you don't do certain movements and you kind of like create this whole alternate movement pattern. But yoga has always been my kind of like go-to. And I didn't realize it until the last like maybe 5 years that, oh, it's your diagnostic. You go to class and you see where you are right now in terms of hip alignment, in terms of knee flexibility, in terms of balance. And then you go and train based on that observation. So if I'm having trouble standing on that leg, I'm going to go train hamstrings and quads to make sure my legs are sturdy. Or if I'm having trouble with balance, my core is probably a little weak at this point, it provides information so that you can train specifically, as opposed to, which is fun sometimes, to do a body split and just keep going at it. But a lot of times you lose sight of like, oh, my body is looking a certain way, but is it functioning in the way that or is it functioning as well as it can? So I started doing the Bikram when I was living in DC at Howard. This is probably about, almost 12, 13 years ago, maybe 14. And when I first started, I couldn't even like touch my bicep to my ears. I was in there like this because I was so tight in the shoulder and the upper thoracic spine that I couldn't even move my shoulders. So that has taught me like, oh, this is the proper like range of motion that each joint should have. And there's certain things I'm still working at in that process, but that has been like a through line in terms of judging where I am physically. And I take that to the weight room. I take that to my own backyard workouts. I take that to the character. So and jiu-jitsu has become another thing where it's how to express that physicality in a safe way, but monitoring those old injuries and pushing past like your mental limits, as well as it's a playground for that for me,
All that makes a lot of sense. What I like about this is you just have a wider array of tools that I think that most people do. And if I'm correct, you tend to, well, you could answer this, you tend to rebalance the amount you do of different things based on what you feel like you need at any given time.
Yeah.
And part of that might be preparing for a role, but how much of it is for your emotional well-being, your physical health?
Ooh.
Because it's not just all in service of the next role. It's deeper, right?
No, because I think as an artist, you spend most of your time preparing to do art. So yeah, it's all in preparation to the task. But later in life, it becomes more about just living life. And when the work comes, it comes. But I think ultimately it is in service of like bettering myself as a human, holding myself accountable, because it's not purely for acting. I would love to be a 60-year-old who is still fit and runs regularly and still like picks up a mace bell and swings it around, or kettlebells, and building the body and nurturing it even in the older years, or nurturing it now so that when that time comes, you're already there. It's but it goes in waves. Sometimes the bodybuilding split or going to the gym like 6 days a week is not fun. It's not actually rewarding the mind. So I'll switch it up. I'll go to yoga for 5 days straight and then maybe take a break, or this past year I had a little injury in my tricep and I pulled away from lifting for about 5 months. I didn't set foot inside a normal gym. And my activities consisted of jiu-jitsu, yoga, and going for hikes with my vest on. I didn't want to aggravate because it was really hard to press, and I wanted that muscle to like not I didn't want to build muscle around that injury that wasn't fully healed, but I found a lot more range of motion and a lot more length in my muscles from just doing yoga and jiu-jitsu. I don't know, that combination worked well together. But you just kind of feel it out. You have to listen to what your body wants. And I think that's another thing too. Like if you're chasing a physique or running after a routine each to each his own, that someone has prescribed to you, that's not fit for your body, your results are not going to be the best because you're not actually tuning into, oh, this is how my body moves. This is how my body responds to 10 reps as opposed to 10 reps at a high weight, 10 reps at a low weight. What are these things, and how do you build something for yourself that is attuned to like what you need, as opposed to someone prescribing, oh, this is how you look like this. Well, you're not going to look like that because that's not your body. You know, you can gain muscle in those areas, but yeah, that kind of specificity for me was important because I worked with a lot of trainers in the past and I've got a lot of great information from them. And it wasn't until I kind of took that leap and said, okay, I'm not going to rely on someone else to build a program for me. I'm going to figure it out myself with the information that I know and the resources I have. I mean, we have it all at our fingertips if you look at, if you know, just Google. But I mean, it's half the battle. Then you have to like actually do it, commit to it, you know. A big part of Twisted Metal. So a lot of times when I choose a location to work out and I'm looking for specific equipment, and I had to, you know, sport abs the whole time. So I was like, okay, I need a GBH. If I don't have that machine, I won't be able to maintain. So every gym that I worked out at, from prepping out here, Zoo Culture, to going to Toronto, going to Good Life Fitness, actually
shout out Good Life
public gym, and then a shout out to Fortis Fitness. They had a GBH, and that just changed the game because the ab work needed to go past a certain degree of movement for me to maintain, because I'm a fat boy. So for me to maintain abs, I have to like really go ham on it, you know?
And you got to meet my friend Lee Boyce because he was presenting at that same thing.
Yeah.
And Lee works out of Fortis as well. So one of their locations.
No, it's a great, great gym.
So this one's always fun. How physically demanding, you know, obviously varies by roles, but how physically demanding is your acting? You already talked about long days on set, so that's demand. And does that incorporate any stunt work whatsoever?
Oh, you're talking about demanding. Acting is demanding because you have to be emotionally available. Like, that's a huge part of it. We haven't talked about that. That's like the huge core of it. And then, yeah, I usually do my own stunts. It's really hard to find someone to double me. I got a homie in Atlanta that doubled me on Walking Dead and on Fight Night, but I never let him work. They'll dress him out in the suit and everything, and I was like, it's okay. I'll drive the truck. I got it, you know, or I got it, dog. And all I gotta do is fire the gun and do a dive roll. I got it. You know, I try to like do as much as I can because I want to see if I can do it, you know? So with Twisted Metal, they had a dilemma because they're trying to find a guy my size, my complexion, and they did, but I don't think we used him because I did the entire fight myself. It's also hard to match someone's muscular build, the details of their body, the shape of their shoulders, you know, like it's really hard to match that. So yeah, I got in the trenches and did most of the fight work on that. Yeah, it was a good time.
And I guess that the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and funny enough, the yoga, because yoga is all about body control as well. I think those two things go much better together than a lot of people would understand that they do. They're probably very useful for them to be able to choreograph a fight.
I mean, they're useful, but you know, I studied theater, so I've taken a few dance classes. I know how to put it together in my head, you know. I studied ballet, you know, I did a little ballet, a little bit of, you know, modern and all that. It just works your brain, like mind, body coordination, you know. But all that stuff kind of plays in, you know, how to make it look a certain way. So you have choices about how I'm going to throw a punch or how I'm going to like clothesline a guy, you know? Yeah, it's all like kind of, it's fun to like put all that information together, you know, and have control over the instrument. I think that's the biggest thing I'm talking about here is like control over the instrument.
Whenever I get new clients and they have a dance background, I love it because even if they don't have lifting experience, dance, they know body control, right? They know their bodies. They learn any other expression of movement very, very well. Does that kind of been your experience? Do you think that dance background actually helped you learn these other things?
Yeah, having any sort of movement background is leaps and bounds better than someone who doesn't, you know? And I had the the privilege and the honor to work with some really great movement teachers in general. Like while at Juilliard, I studied with Moni Yakim, who is a pioneer in mime, and his physical like gesture work and character work is kind of what I use to create, not kind of, it was what I used to create Corvus Lave. When I got the part, I literally went back to school and trained with him for a week to find his physicality, find how he sounds, you know? I feel like all of that kind of plays into this whole thing of like, how can you use your instruments, your body, your voice, your as an actor or artist to transform into something, you know? And that awareness of how it moves, how it appears to other people, the control of how to like manipulate your body, it all kind of plays into your ability to, you know, transform into something else. But for fights and stuff and the physicality, it's always great to have some kind of background. Like that's why I work out regardless of what I'm doing, what show, I do some sort of movement before every day at work. I'll never just show up to work straight out of bed into the chair unless something happens and I miss my workout. Or I'll have kettlebells or bands in my trailer, because moving the body and warming it up is so important, especially if you physically have to be in a scene, whether you're just sitting there or not, sitting there or doing a crazy fight scene or, you know, just walking down a hallway. Warming up the body is key. You know, you want to just be aware of how your body is moving that day and use that.
I think that's a good argument for the type of people who do their workout first in the day before then they go into whatever their work is, right? Like, while, you know, there are a lot of unique aspects to a career in acting, I think there's probably, it's still the career, it's the job, it's the thing you show up to do every day. You mentioned the kettlebells in the trailer. So chances are you're not rolling around with a Iron Paradise the way that The Rock does, right? I think that's a little bit unique, but you're obviously you travel in different sets, you're away from home a fair bit. And you also mentioned how you weren't eating from the spread to make sure that you had your nutrition under control. So, you know, are there any underlying rules or just things that you do? You already talked about going to gyms in Toronto to maintain your physicality. You know, maybe that's finding a jiu-jitsu gym or a yoga studio where you are. Like, what does that look like?
You know, it's funny. I had to make a choice when I first went to shoot Twisted Metal and prep for it, because I was doing jiu-jitsu. I was training. I was also trying to do a cut, but also maintain mass. And for me personally, rolling always deflated my muscle. Not, I don't know exactly what it was necessarily. I just would like lose all of the pump. And I was like, oh, if I'm gonna shoot in this state every day, I gotta maintain my pump. And the aesthetic is right now more important than this practitioner. So I put it on hold for the time I was shooting so that I could maintain the look and physique that I wanted, you know?
Well, it's about carving out, maybe it's the proactive things you did to find both the spaces to train in or the tools to train with, and also creating having the food, nutrition environment around you. And obviously that probably changes from location to location, city to city, because you're away from home.
One of the key things for me, like when I'm going for a job or leaving town, I make sure I have a kitchen where I'm staying.
Okay.
Because, well, you have no control over your nutrition if you're eating out. I mean, you can make good choices, but to really have the utmost control, you need to prepare it yourself. And that was a lesson I learned maybe like 5-6 years ago. It's just that is the tried and true way to like get results. If you are preparing your food and you are weighing it out, holding yourself accountable by logging it, and that is how you maintain. You know, I mean, it's not the only way, but for me, that's the only way I keep myself true, so that I can have that cheat meal at the end of 2 weeks, you know, and not feel bad about it. But yeah, traveling is fun, you know. I mean, the whole thing is like you find the yoga studio. Like usually if I'm going somewhere on vacation or just for work, I always look up who teaches Bikram 90 or some variant, because I know that practice for me is ritualistic. You know, I need that. Then I look for a good gym. I'll often like just outsource to friends who are from that city and get a list from them and go check out places, you know. But yeah, so it's just always like using your resources, you know, to create your lifestyle you have at home in another city, you know.
That makes a lot of sense. You and I, so we're going to be going down to the Olympia weekend. So
Oh yeah.
anybody listening, if you want to come down to the Olympia weekend, me and Michael will be rolling around together, hanging out. And so we'll also have to like pick out a couple of gyms to go hit up. I mean, it's the Olympia, so there'll be like literally be like meatheads everywhere, right? So we'll pre-plan that. Then we have to navigate nutrition at, at the Vegas Strip, right? But we'll figure that shit out. There'll be like a mountain of protein powder down at the Olympia at the expo.
And no buffets for you, right?
You know what? I can put away food at a buffet. I know that the Vegas buffets aren't what they used to be. I think they've changed that a little bit, right?
All right.
Okay. So how do you create the physical, but also the mental space for the creativity and the writing side of stuff? Because we talk a lot about your acting roles, but you're also a writer too.
Yeah, that is tricky. Right now, I am reading a couple books on, writing dialogue. I went to a workshop last week that was more so talking about finding your voice as a writer, you know. This is not my main lane, so it's something I'm trying to develop as a muscle now. And I think that's what I'm working on at the moment, inadvertently. I have a process for, creating a character. I went through training for that. So I know how to tap into what that is and without like being very strict about it, allowing the work to kind of transpire and create something. Whereas writing for me, it's in two different lanes. I'm a poet, but I'm now trying to write narrative, and it's trying to marry those two talents in a way. And it's fun to like tap into something that you haven't really honed or worked on. And yeah, it's been an interesting journey thus far. Hopefully I'll have a couple scripts by the end of the year. But I'm just kind of researching and building right now.
That's interesting. I mean, obviously I love writing, but I have no experience with writing anything along the lines of fiction or dialogue. It's entirely, fitness or career related nonfiction. Okay. Let's finish up with one more thing. I always find this one funny because, when I was visiting Santa Monica, so we went and hung out. We got to go for a hike. You took me up on a hike up like by the Hollywood. Yeah, like this the Hollywood sign kind of near there, right? That was
It's
really
called
cool.
the Hollywood Reservoir.
Yes. Anyway,
Yeah.
that was beautiful, gorgeous. Then we went and kind of hung out down at a coffee shop in LA. But I know you to know that like you don't court what it would call like the Hollywood culture lifestyle. If anything, you seem to like almost like keep away from that a little bit. So, how do you deal with celebrity culture? Let's call it, because I mean, you go to, you probably have gone to some conventions, especially when it came to the Walking Dead stuff. I know there was a lot of stuff in the wake of that because that's like big. There's a lot of pop culture stuff there. So what was it like walking into that space where, you're obviously being recognized versus walking around your everyday life?
Well, I like I said before, I'm not I don't view myself as a celebrity. I'm not. I'm an artist. I'm an actor,
Fair, true.
and no, and I think that is for me that helps me understand a bit more about my purpose. And you're speaking on conventions. So the first one I did, I was hella frightened because I am not the character.
Mm.
There are things that kind of cross over, but I am not him. And so it was frightening for me to like, oh, I'm gonna go sit up at a table and sign pictures of this character I played from Walking Dead, and they're gonna expect me to be him. And this is why I love the Walking Dead fans so much. They accept you as you are. They want to know who you really are. And to hear from fans like how different episodes spoke to them, or moments that touched them, or the fact that they've been watching the show for the past 8, 9 years because they used to watch it with a family member who passed away, and that's their way of keeping them alive. Those moments are so touching because then you realize, oh, what we're doing is bigger than just entertainment. It hits home for a lot of people. And I feel like those situations have been the most rewarding because in theater, when you finish a show, you get a round of applause. Whereas with television, it's in a void. You're sending it out there and people are getting to digest and watch and enjoy it, but you never get that feedback or that round of applause. And I feel like when I go to places like the camp events, really beautiful convention out in Georgia, I feel that love as if, okay, this is the end of the show and the audience is showing their appreciation. And I think that kind of exchange is kind of essential because you put it out there and you hope that it's received, but you never know how much it's hitting someone or what about it that made someone like, I don't know, made them love the show even more or watch the show even more. And I think it's just beautiful to have that communication with the artist and, and the fan.
Man, you hit on something there. I mean, I just think about my own experience with television and movies. I grew up, my dad owned video stores when we were younger. So a lot of movies and that stuff. And I haven't been as plugged into movie and TV of recent. I don't tend to have a lot of time for it. But music's another big part of my life. And there's so much of an emotional resonance and oftentimes freezing in time of my experience with watching certain TV shows, certainly, some of this music. And, I tend to find that there are actors, there are artists who you develop a really strong, relationship with. And obviously that's a parasocial relationship almost invariably because, it's not every once in a while you get to literally meet someone that a good example, I got to meet when I was down in Columbus, Ohio, Richard Patrick of Filter, who's the little brother of Robert Patrick, the iconic actor of Liquid Metal, Terminator, T2 fame. And Richard was great. And, we follow each other on social media and we'll interact here. He just sent me a message yesterday. They got a new song out, right? So he just shoots this thing my way, right? Anyway, I love their stuff. But that being said, I've been a fan of Filter for 30 years. And I can remember I was listening to one of their songs and it brought me back to a time with a specific video game I used to play 25 years ago, right? That's how strong that emotional relationship is. So it makes sense to me that people are going to frame these things. And you remember the people who you watch these shows with, right? Someone you were in a relationship with in the past, or again, family. So I hadn't even thought about it that way. So I think that's pretty powerful stuff. And that's a good place to leave off. So people can go follow you on Instagram at MJS. Let's see, MJ Shaw, Nuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there we go.
Interesting story about that. So I had a music teacher at Juilliard who always used to call me. I walk in the room, she's like, "Oh, it's Shaw Nuff." And I thought she was talking about The Last Dragon. Come to find out, years later, I ended up curating my own record collection. And while out here, I found this as a composer from the 1930s, 40s. He was a band leader named Shaw Nuff. So the whole time I thought the reference was something else, but it was actually a jazz band leader, MJ Shaw Nuff.
It's funny because I get tangled up because the word Sean is in there. That's not your name. So it's but yeah, MJ Shaw Nuff. And anybody wants to follow you, and you post a lot of stuff, a lot of the mace swinging, kettlebell stuff, a lot of your workouts will be, especially in your story. And I could just follow what you're doing with your career, which has been fun.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. And I mean, with anybody who's more entrenched in the fitness industry, usually they have other resources, but I guess you just want to direct people to go watch the stuff you're doing, right? So where can they watch Twisted Metal?
You can watch Twisted Metal on Peacock.
Okay. So where do we get Peacock? Is that a streaming service? Because that's new to me.
Oh, really? Oh,
yeah.
Well, it may be different in Canada.
Yeah.
But in the U.S., Peacock is a streaming service. So yeah, just download and sign up and enjoy it.
Beautiful. All right. I hope you guys all check it out. And, if you've already actually seen Michael on any of the old stuff, I actually would love to hear from you. Be like, if you recognize him from The Walking Dead. And thank you for taking the time, my friends, and everybody tuning in. I hope you guys enjoyed this, different kind of episode. I've got a few of these hopefully planned down the road with, a few figures who fitness is part of their life, but they're not traditional fitness professionals. So thanks guys for tuning in. I appreciate you guys.